I'll be honest, home invasions freak me out. One happened to me years ago while I was staying with family, and it left a mark, which is probably why these stories hit so hard for me. Anyway, let's get into it. Saved my family from a home invasion by staying up later than the intruder. The house I grew up in was very large, with my bedroom being at the front of the house by the street, and my parents all the way down the other end. The garage was next to my room with a window looking in, and I would keep this blind up to help me wake up in the morning. My bed was then against the other window, which faced the street. This story happened when I was 16 or 17, and I am a girl, and I do not have any siblings, if that is important at all. As a teen, I tended to stay up quite late, cruising MySpace and chatting with friends on MSN. One night I was sitting in bed doing so. It was around 4 a.m. when I heard distinctly human snoring coming from the other side of my window. I quickly ran down the other end of the house and woke my parents. Dad went to investigate and said it must have been a possum or koala, as there was nothing there. The next night it was a similar thing for me. I stayed up late, except this time I had turned off all my lights and was just lying in bed, listening to music very softly. About an hour later I heard a bang right outside my bedroom window. Now, after the night before, Dad was grumpy enough at me for waking him. I lay there for a few seconds longer, contemplating what to do, as I knew he would be angry at being woken a second night in a row before I said, "Fuck it," and legged it down to my parents' room. Dad was not having a bar of it this time, so Mum said she would walk me back to my room. Upon getting to my room, the light in the garage was now on. Remember, I keep this blind up, and I swore to Mum that it was off before me. She went and got Dad, who went to investigate and found the roller door up. As he walked towards it, it started closing. He thought the electricals must have been glitching, as it was a bit stormy, and we all went back to bed. The next morning, Mum woke me up to apologize. Someone had smashed our car window open and stolen the roller door remote. We never kept the house door on the other side of the roller door locked, and they shut the roller on Dad so they could get away. I always think about what I would have done had I stayed in my room any longer and heard the door going up and seen the person walk past my window, as there was no way I would have been able to get to my parents' room in time. To break in the middle of the night, knowing full well that everyone was home, still gives me chills over what could have happened. My parents then went away for the weekend, leaving me on my own. I slept the next few nights in their room, with the door locked, my hockey stick, every knife in the house, and the house phone. Not a lot of sleeping happened though. How I survived a house invasion. This story happened more than 10 years ago, when I was still a student. It contains a few graphic details of animal harm and violence, so discretion is advised. A bit of backstory. As with most students, I was always broke and had a few ventures apart from my part-time job to bring in extra money. One of them was house and pet sitting. I have always had a love for animals, so when this couple contacted me to ask to house sit for them for the last few days before they returned from their overseas trip, as the last sitter had bailed on them and their 6-month-old golden retriever puppy would be alone, I jumped at the opportunity. The fact that they promised to pay me the full 2-week fee for staying there less than a week made it even more appealing. Little did I know how badly it would turn out. I got the details, got the keys from the agent, and headed over to the house, as it was already after 5 p.m. and almost dark as it was early spring. I got to the house, which was a really nice place, but it bordered a not-so-good area that was, and still is, prone to crime. House break-ins, robberies, etc. It did not bother me much because, nothing will happen to me. I know, young and naive. The first 4 nights went without a hitch, watching movies, using the jacuzzi, and just generally enjoying myself. The owners were set to return on the 5th day, fairly late at night. I went over to check on the doggo. I got a call from them about 10 p.m., saying their flight was delayed. They were going to stay in a hotel, and would do the 3.5-hour drive back the following morning. They asked if I could sleep there again that night, which was fine. I was already there, and had my overnight bag still in my car. I called my dad to let him know of the plans, as I was still staying with my parents, and he specifically asked what the address was. I normally did not give them details like that, because I was old enough to look after myself. I still believe to this day that probably saved my life. I eventually got to bed about 1 a.m., and it felt like I had only slept 5 minutes when I was awoken by a window breaking. I could hear movement, and what sounded like footsteps running down the hallway. The first thing I did was grab my phone, and just hit redial. Thanks to my old Motorola phone, Redialing was as simple as pressing one button, as my dad was the last number I had called, hoping that he would wake up from the call. I then dropped the phone between the headboard and mattress in case my dad picked up, so he could hear what was going on. I had barely done that when the first guy stormed through the bedroom door. I could see his silhouette, and he had a knife in his hand. When he saw me, he raised it and came at me. Now, one thing for those unfamiliar with South Africa and the crime is that robberies and house invasions are usually very brutal and violent. People get murdered or tortured if they in the slightest retaliate or do not cooperate with the robbers. Out of instinct, I raised my legs back when he came at me, and when he came within reach, I kicked both legs out as hard as I could. Now, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6 feet 3 inches, and at that stage I weighed about 100 kilos, or 220 pounds, and I was fit and strong. My time not spent at the university or work was at the gym. I could do an easy 250-pound bench press and 350-pound squat. When I kicked and made contact with the guy, he completely lifted off the ground and shot into the wall. Luckily, the knife shot out of his hand as well. Before he got the chance to get up, I was on top of him, driving my right knee into his face and in return his head into the wall. I knew that my life depended on it, so I put in some extra force. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes. But before I could get up, I heard the sound of a pistol cock and I froze. It felt like all the blood drained from my body, and I became just numb. I remember the only thing that went through my head was that if he shot me, I would rather die than be disabled or dependent on other people who would have to take care of me. He stood like that with a pistol against my head for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 10 seconds. I did not move, and he eventually said, in very broken English, to get on the bed face down. I panicked, but thought if he wanted to shoot me, he already would have done so. So I did as he said. He threw a blanket over me, and I turned into a fetal position with my back against the wall, just so if they wanted to stab me, I had my legs and arms in front to protect my body. By that time, I had forgotten that I had called my dad, and the guy I had kneed was still down. I heard a third guy come into the room, and I could hear what sounded like Portuguese to me. I could not understand what they said, but I recognized it, as we used to go to Mozambique on holiday a lot, and that is the main language spoken there. One guy tried to get the guy I had put down off the ground, while the others started to ransack the house, shoving valuables into a big bag. It was about this time that I heard tires screeching, and a car approaching at what sounded like Mach 1. The car skidded to a halt right in front of the gate, and I heard someone scream. It was my dad. The three inside the house panicked and ran out the back door and tried to jump the fence. My dad opened fire, shooting in their general direction. Now, I know my dad missed them on purpose because if he wanted to hit them, he would have, as he is not one of but the best shot I know. And I'm not just saying that because he is my dad. He is ex-Army Special Forces, or Rexys for those in the know, represented South Africa in the Clay Pigeon World Championships a couple of years ago, has various regional pistol and rifle championship titles, and is a gunsmith by occupation. I have seen him hit golf balls at 50 meters with his pistol. Politics and the racial situation in the country would have had him in big trouble had he hit one of them. I grabbed the house keys, pressed the gate remote, and my dad called the police while he came in. I met him at the front door, and we walked out to the car to wait there for the police. It took them over an hour to get there, some excuse about no vehicle being available. By that time, I had calmed down and started to look for the dog. I could not find her anywhere. I grabbed a flashlight from my dad and started scanning the surrounding yard, and as I got to the corner, I could see her lying on the ground. I got to her and saw she was dead. Later autopsies revealed she was poisoned, and the police found pieces of meat laced with poison near the fence. Poisoning is a pretty standard practice in my country for dealing with dogs at a house or area targeted for a break-in or robbery. I was fuming and so sad. The police were also pretty useless and had a don't-give-a-shit attitude, barely taking our statements. By that time, it was starting to get light, and I retrieved my bag and phone, locked the house as well as I could without touching anything, and drove home behind my dad. Only when I got home did I get the story from my dad's side. He said he answered my call, only to hear the shouting and what sounded like fighting going on, and when I did not respond, he flew out of the house and raced over. Luckily, he had asked me for the address the previous night, and he knows the area well enough to know exactly which house it was. Now my dad got there pretty quickly, and he said he stayed on the line the whole time, only hanging up when he stopped at the gate. My parents' house is about 6 miles from there, through a residential area. It's normally about a 20-minute drive. The call duration was 7 minutes and 13 seconds. I met the detective there later that day, gave my statement, they took fingerprints, etc., and the owners got back about the same time. The rest of the day was a blur as I came down from the shock and adrenaline. Now, that is not where the story ends. About 7 or 8 months later, I got a call from the detective telling me they caught the guys, and I must come to a lineup to point them out. I specifically told her that I did not see any of their faces as it was dark, and after the guy held the gun against my head, I was under the blanket and did not see anything. She assured me that they caught them on fingerprints and would show them to me beforehand. This might not be the ethically correct way to do it, but they wanted to have as much evidence as possible against them. You will understand why in a minute. I got to the police station, and unlike what you see in the movies, there is no one-way glass or separate room. They brought the 3 guys into the room and made them stand against the wall. The one, who I was later told was the leader, the one I had need, looked at me with so much hate as I had never seen in my life. He had the eyes of someone who would slit your throat and not blink an eye. His name was Joseph Dragon Sambo. He pulled his hand up to his neck and made the slit my throat gesture. You know which one I mean. We left the room, and the detective gave me a copy of his rap sheet. Among others, it listed 4 counts of murder, I think 8 or 9 for attempted murder, multiple assaults, aggravated assault, over 100 house break-ins and robberies, and sexual assault. I was shocked. The detective told me that had I not taken him out first and fast that night, I definitely would not have gotten away so lightly. Now, this is also not where the story ends. 3 days later, I got another call from the detective, saying that I should be careful, as he had escaped from custody, and they had not caught him yet. I was not worried too much, as the robbery wasn't at my house, and I had changed cars, so he probably could not find me. Also, I had gotten my firearm license and carried my pistol on me 24/7. I did not hear anything after that until about 2 years later, when I saw the detective in the grocery store. We started talking about the case, and she told me that he was killed during a home invasion. He broke into the wrong house, and the owner was waiting for him, pistol in hand. Shot him once in the stomach and once in the neck. Thanks to the slow response time of emergency services and police, he bled out on the guy's living room floor, ridding society of a piece of human garbage. I want to add a bit of info to this. All 3, who were caught, were Mozambican nationals, undocumented with no fingerprints or ID in the system, essentially illegal immigrants. It is the opinion in South Africa that more than 70% of all violent crime is committed by illegal immigrants, mainly of Mozambican, Zimbabwean, and Nigerian descent. It makes it fairly easy because none of those countries have extradition to South Africa, so if it gets too hot, they just flee back over the border and nothing can be done to them. This whole ordeal has made me more vigilant, heightened my situational awareness, and made me a little paranoid about double and triple checking all doors, locks, etc. My heightened situational awareness has also allowed me to remove myself from a few potentially dangerous situations in the years after the incident, but it has also robbed me of my peace of mind. I have since immigrated to a safer country, but I still sometimes wake up at night if I hear a noise. So, to keep up with tradition, Joseph, we will never meet again as you have passed, but to his cronies or anyone who wants to try something similar, please do pay me a visit. I will arrange your swift departure and reunion with Joseph in hell, and to Joseph, I hope you died in agony for poisoning Daisy. A home intruder came into my room one night. So I started reading the posts here, and I realized that my story would fit in well, so here goes. I am a 27-year-old woman, and this happened to me 9 or 10 years ago when I was a senior in high school. We lived in a pretty large house, but my siblings were all away at college or boarding school, so it was only my parents and me in the house. I am a crazy light sleeper. So when I woke up in the dark and saw my alarm clock flashing 3:11 a.m., I was not too surprised. However, I was wide awake, not just groggily staring in my sleep. I lay there, wondering what had woken me, when I heard very soft footsteps on the stairs outside my bedroom. The door to my room was parallel to the left side of the bed, and I happened to be lying with my back to the door. When the footsteps approached my door, I thought it must be one of my parents checking on me for some reason. Then the doorknob was turned. So slowly. Still, I thought they were just trying not to wake me. The door began to open again, slowly and carefully. It made a creaking noise no matter how slowly it was opened, so the person finally just shoved it the rest of the way to silence the creak. Still, my naive brain thought it was one of my parents, until they clicked on a flashlight. I froze. Terror flooded me, and I remember that I instantly broke out in sweat. They were behind me, and I was facing away, so they could not see my eyes wide open as they shone the beam straight on me. I always used to think that if something like that ever happened, I would be such a badass and I would whip out of bed and punch them, attack them, shout, scream, do something. But I could do nothing at all. All I could do was try to keep my breathing deep, and even despite the pounding of my heart, so that the intruder would not know I was awake. After about 10 seconds, they finally moved the light away. I prayed and begged and bartered with anything that would listen to me as the intruder walked around my room, looking at my things. I could vaguely see their shape, large and bulky, like they were wearing 2 coats. They had a baseball cap on. They did not shine the flashlight on me again, and after a few minutes, which felt like an eternity, they left my room. I could still hear them, though, walking around the rest of the 2nd floor through my siblings' empty bedrooms. I was still sweating, still frozen in terror, not knowing what to do. I wanted to grab my phone and call my dad, sleeping downstairs. I wanted to call our landline so that the phone would ring and wake my parents up. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to get up and run from my room. I wanted to cry, but I could not do any of those things. I was afraid that they would hear me, and I did not know if they had a weapon and would try to hurt me or my parents. I would not wish such helpless terror on my worst enemy. I do not know how, but I must have passed out from fear, or the adrenaline wore off, and I fell asleep somehow, because the next thing I knew it was 6 a.m., and I could hear my parents downstairs. I ran downstairs, and as calmly as I could, I asked them if one of them had been in my room last night. Their faces went blank, and they said no, they had not. That was the last straw. I broke down in sobs and told them, then someone was in my room last night. Even as I typed this, my hands have begun shaking, and I have teared up. The police were called, even though there was little they could do at that point. Apparently, when my parents woke up, all of the doors to the outside were standing wide open, and there was a duffel bag at the bottom of the stairs. All that was inside was a coil of nylon rope and an empty USB flash drive. I do not want to think about what it was for. The intruder had not taken anything, and we have no idea why they left in what appeared to be a hurry. It took me about a week to be able to sleep in my own room, a sanctuary that felt violated and frightening to me now. I carry pepper spray, sleep with a machete next to my bed, and double-check my locks every night. Hopefully this will never happen again, but if it does, hopefully I will not freeze. It has been 10 years, and my most common nightmare is that someone is in my room, standing in the shadows, watching me. This story happened when I was 12 years old. I am a female and 25 now. The story I am about to tell you might not be scary to most, but for me and my parents, it was. I remember it was a Saturday night, around 9 or 10 p.m. during summertime. I owned one dog at the time. His name was Benny. My parents decided that night that they felt like going for a walk around the block, walking Benny, and asked me whether I wanted to join them. I said no because I wanted to play PWI on my PC, Perfect World International. My parents were okay with leaving me alone since the walk would not take longer than 30 minutes tops. As my parents got dressed to leave the house, I logged into PWI and looked around in my guild and global chat to see if anyone was on. For some reason, no one was, so I decided to join my parents. I got dressed, put Benny on his leash, and we all left. I would like to mention that I lived in an apartment building that had 10 floors, and we lived on the very first floor. Not sure how to explain, but you have the basement of the building, and then the first row of apartments. Basically, you enter the building and are already facing the apartments. I lived in the very first one. I remember always hating that because whoever passed by our door, we would hear them at any time of the day or night. Whoever was lurking at night, we would hear them. It was somewhat eerie to live on floor 0. Anyway, we left the house and my dad closed the door. We had 3 keyholes and a steel bar that blocked the door from the inside. The bar covered half of the door. Precautions were my father's obsession. We exited the building and enjoyed our walk. After 15 minutes, we realized the wind had changed from warm summer wind to incoming storm wind. My mom made the call to go back home, as Benny had already done all his duties, so we all returned. We opened the building door, climbed the 5 stairs to our door, and attempted to open it. My father did the following: unlocked the first 3 locks, and then attempted to unlock the metal bar that held the door locked. At that moment my father paused, turned around to us with the most serious face I had ever seen on him, and whispered to us to call the police and ring the neighbor's doorbell. My mom went to the second apartment, and the neighbor, whom I will call Ted, came out, asking my father what happened. My dad whispered to him, covering the see-through hole of the door. "Someone is in our house. He or they're holding the door. Please stay here with my family and attempt to open it. I will be back." After saying that, I saw my father rush, all by himself, around the building in the dark. I say dark because we did not have a street light on the side of our apartment facing the block garden. My dad disappeared into the darkness. I went outside too, not following him too closely, but only to hear if he was in trouble. He is my dad. Do not judge me. As soon as I got out, I heard him shout, "Hey, you come back. Who the hell do you think you are?" I called the police. At the same time, I heard him shout. I looked at Ted, who managed to open the door and enter the house. I went after him and entered my house. It no longer felt like my house. In just 15 minutes, while we were walking, the home invaders had made a complete mess of our house. All our shelves and wardrobes were pulled out, and our clothes were scattered all over the house. Benny's dry food was all over the floor, indicating they must have tripped over his bowls, probably not knowing we owned a dog. But what scared me the most was how organized they were. I say they because after seeing the disaster that was left behind, we knew it was impossible for just one person to hold the door, steal, and organize what they wanted to take with them. I say organize because the thieves put in our living room, all packed and ready, what they wanted but couldn't steal. On the couch, they had placed our laptops, one of our TVs, my father's collection of coins, our phones, chargers, wallets, and even my father's camera. He is a photographer. And that week, he had to attend a wedding. They did not have enough time to steal all of that, so they just settled for some of my mom's jewelry and some pocket money. After seeing this, in my silly child's mind, I rushed to my room to check my piggy bank. I always saved up money from whatever chores I did. It was not much, but it was my work and savings, and at that time I thought they had stolen it too. When I entered my room, I saw the metal bars covering my windows were cut open and my window broken. This is how they entered through my room. My room was the only room facing the side of the building, and the one most secluded from view. Needless to say, I never felt safe in my own room, in which I had to live for the next 10 years of my life until I moved in with my fiancée. The police arrived, and they started throwing white dust. I still have no idea what that is. All over our house to find fingerprints, took pictures, took our statements, and analyzed my room and window. They were unable to catch the home invaders, but were able to tell us that this invasion was not the only one in our neighborhood. During that month, another 4 houses were broken into, one of them being the home of a cop, not related to the cops at our home. They told us that the invaders analyzed their victims, learned their schedules, and even knew where the children's rooms were. As they seemed to be entering the houses through the children's windows, all the families affected by them had children. They did not expect us to be back that soon, and panicked. Hence one of them was holding the door with his body so that the others could flee. The person after whom my dad was shouting was probably the one holding the door and escaping last through my broken window. I do not know what could have happened if I had not changed my mind and given up on raiding for gear and PWI. I would probably have come face to face with these invaders. I am happy I did not, and I hope to God I never ever meet them. The home invasion that could have gone way, way worse. This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. And what makes it worse is that had things gone down differently, I might not be here to tell the story. Okay, first things first. I am a girl, about 5 feet 7 inches and around 130 pounds. This happened to me about 3 years ago when I was in my early 20s and still a student living in a very safe area. Growing up, I had loved martial arts, and having grown up in a small rural town, I would take what I could get. Karate? Fine. Judo? Sure. Kung Fu? Why not? Taekwondo? Sign me up. I love martial arts, I still do, because they help me discipline my body and mind and grow my confidence. It had been a few years since I moved to my country's capital to study, and I had kind of fallen off the martial arts wagon at that point, with college taking up most of my time. I should also mention that at the time, I lived with my younger brother and our cat. We lived on the first floor, the second floor, for all my American people, right next to a military camp and a patch of forest that leads to a creek. On our back balcony, there was a circular metal ladder that led up to our balcony and the kitchen door, which of course we always kept under lock and key, except for when the cat wanted to go out. When that happened, we would unlock the door, and he would go down the outdoor metal stairs to find his cat friends and play. I commuted to my college every day by walking 30 minutes to a bus stop, then riding the bus for an hour, and then walking another 10 minutes until I made it to campus. When it was time to go home, I would have to do the same thing all over again, so as you can imagine, it was very tiring. I would be out of the house every day from 10 in the morning until almost 10 at night, so when I came home I would be knackered. I do not believe in premonitions much, but I do believe in instinct, and for quite a while I felt like something was up with that patch of forest behind our apartment. I felt watched. Maybe it was the blackness of that patch of forest that made me feel uneasy because there was not a single light there, and the outdoor ladder looked like it descended into an abyss. You could take 3 steps into that patch of forest, and you would be under the complete cover of darkness. It made me feel weird because even though I could not see anything, I knew that something was up. I had no proof, but I knew it. I was in class one Wednesday afternoon with my best friend at the time, and a professor came in to pitch an internship to us. Internships are not very well known in my country, so professors actually have to argue their case about why, as students, we could benefit from this. My best friend, I will call her Kay, was very interested, but when the professor listed the requirements, she realized she could not apply, as her GPA was not high enough. This led to Kay having a crying fit after the class was over, which led to a panic attack, and it got so bad that she called her boyfriend to come pick her up from campus. Since I did not want to leave her alone, I stayed with her until her boyfriend showed up, and I got in his car with her. The conversation in the car was basically me and her boyfriend trying to console her and help cheer her up. I asked her if she would like me to go over to her place so we could all hang out, but she said that she was okay and did not want to put me through the hassle of commuting home the next day. She lives a full hour away by car, so 2 hours away by public transport. So it was decided that they would drop me off at my house, and they would go to theirs. We got to my house around 7 p.m., a full 3 hours before I normally come home. I hugged her, told her to text me if she needed anything, thanked her boyfriend, and got out of the car, glad that I would be home early for a change. I went in through the main entrance, climbed up the stairs to the first floor, and put my key in the lock. I opened the door and called out my brother's name, like I always did, and got no response. The house was dark, except for one light in the room where the front door opened into, and it was eerily quiet. But I felt my stomach tie into a knot because even if I could not hear anything, I could feel that someone was there, and when my instinct talks, I listen. I turned right into the hallway that leads to our rooms, and I saw my brother's door slam shut hard as soon as I got into the hallway. My brother's room is at the end of the hallway on the left, facing my own room, which is on the right of the hallway. My first thought was that my brother had taken a shower and forgotten to get a towel, so he made a run for it from the bathroom, which is next to my room, in embarrassment. But then I heard muffled whispers coming from his room. They sounded hushed and pressing. I still had no reason to be afraid, but I was on high alert because I thought my brother and his friends were planning on jumping out of his room and scaring me, and I was not about to let them get the satisfaction. So I inched down the short hallway through the darkness, and before I knocked on my brother's door, I took a look in my room. It was a complete mess. My mattress was off my bed, my clothes and my books were all over the floor, my jewelry box was empty and thrown on my bed. All in all, it looked like a tornado had gone through there. And the hushed whispers in the next room sounded extremely pressing and anxious now that I was close, because though I had tried to tiptoe as silently as possible, my steps had been audible. I realized what was happening, and I went ballistic. At that moment, I lost it. My fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, and it kicked fight into maximum overdrive. The words danger, thieves, fight hit me like a truck, and I threw my whole weight on my brother's door, busting that door down so furiously you would think it owed me money. I saw no one in the room, but it was also a complete mess, and I knew what I had heard, so I ran to the balcony door. I ripped the curtain out of my way, and went through the open balcony door, just in time to catch one of the thieves right after he had jumped off the balcony ledge. Looking back on it, he looked like a normal guy, black hair, normal height, athletic build, big earring on his left ear. But at the time, he looked like a monster to me. A vile, putrid, home-invading, piece of shit thief monster. I started screaming unintelligible things as I saw him stumble around, obviously having hurt his legs, before he got back on his feet and ran away. They were gone. I was safe. But then it hit me, where was my laptop? I ran into my room and tore the place apart looking for my laptop. It was gone. I started screaming and crying. The unfairness, audacity, and cowardice hit me like a steel toe to the stomach. I screamed and cried like I was in a Grecian tragedy. I am not rich by any means, and neither is my family. I had an old laptop, which was probably worth pennies secondhand. But I needed that laptop for my schoolwork, and without it, I could not finish my semester. Not to mention that I do not have many real-life friends, and the majority of my friends at the time were online, so if I lost that laptop, I lost them too. My laptop was lost, and so was I. I felt violated, dirty, and less than. I was afraid I would throw up, pass out, or both. I was taking such rapid and deep panic breaths that my vision began to blur. In the most panicked and grief-stricken state I have ever been in my life, tears streaming down my face, I called my mother to tell her what had happened, and she told me to call the police. It took me almost a full minute on the phone with the operator, telling her again and again where I lived, who I was, and what had happened before she understood me, and said she would send someone over. A few days later, I was talking with my mother about the incident, and she told me something that hit me hard. I come from a pretty much trilingual household, and she told me that when I called her that night, she could not make out what language I was speaking because I had been so panicked. That makes sense why I had to repeat myself over and over to the operator. I started running around the house like a lunatic, checking every door and every lock in a frenzy until I got to the kitchen and saw that the window had been broken. Without thinking, I slammed it shut. Stupid, I know, but I was beside myself. I was not thinking straight. My brother came home a few minutes later, and when he came in, he saw me panicked, crying my eyes out and speaking almost unintelligibly. He came to the bedrooms, saw the damage, and told me to go sit in the living room and calm down. I did as he said and tried to calm down, but I jumped at every sound and started crying worse, telling him I was sorry that I got home too late and that our laptops were gone. The house seemed so big to me at those moments, so dark and so hostile, and I felt so small and helpless. My brother called me over to my room and showed me a pillowcase full of something, and when we looked inside, we found both laptops, all my jewelry fake, all of it, my old phone, and some other stuff. They had been right in front of me the whole time, but I was so messed up that they did not even register. The police eventually came about an hour later and did nothing, so my brother and I took it to the police station and filed a report of the incident. Since I had seen half of one of the culprits' faces, they asked me to come in for an identification. They even sent over someone to dust for prints. Nothing ever came of it. The police said that since they did not even have a backpack to put the loot in and resorted to using one of our pillowcases, they were almost 100% junkies. We had the outdoor metal ladder ripped off our kitchen balcony, much to my cat's displeasure, since that is how they got in. We also installed several motion-detecting lights. For the next few months, I was constantly on edge, and every time I passed near some suspicious characters who hung around near my usual bus stop, I felt a violent rage boil in me. I caught myself looking for the man I had seen, ready to beat him within an inch of his life. But I never saw him or heard his creepy whisper partner again, and my brother and I moved away from that apartment a few months later, because I never felt comfortable in that apartment again. I picked up kickboxing, and because it has made me stronger, it has helped me feel safer. And I also always carry a knife with me now. I still think back on that encounter and realize how stupid I was. What creeps me out the most is knowing that that night there had been nothing but a thin plywood door separating me from two potentially dangerous men. Even if I know that me busting in my brother's room like a lunatic is what scared them off because of how stupidly fearless I was, I also realize how bad it could have gone. They could have had guns. They could have had knives. They could have had pepper spray, a chain, or whatever. And there were two of them, and only one of me. If they had ganged up on me, even with the adrenaline having turned me into Doom Guy, I do not know how much of a chance I realistically stood against two men. High on whatever they were on and desperate enough to break into an apartment and stuff loot in a pillowcase, had they been willing to put up a fight, this would have ended very, very badly for me. What I do know is that I probably still would have busted in there like Doom Guy. So to the creepy, cowardly bastards who dared break into my apartment and tried to rob me and my brother and ended up traumatizing me so badly I had to move, fuck you both. I hope for your sake we never meet again, because I have been kicking that sandbag for 2 years now and picturing your face every single time. I hid in my bathroom in the midst of a home invasion when I was 9 years old. First of all, this is my first post, and I am from a Spanish-speaking country, so my English can be a little rough at times. About 12 years ago, I was 9 years old, and I was home alone with my 12-year-old brother. We were supposed to go to my aunt's house to have lunch and wait for my mother there. We always did that because we were too young to stay home alone, according to my mum. We got up at 10:30 a.m. I took a shower, then my brother did. After that, we were both in the bathroom brushing our teeth and finishing up when we heard someone knocking on our door. Since every time someone knocked at our door they turned out to be salesmen or Jehovah's Witnesses, we kind of waited for them to go away. After a couple of minutes, I went to see if they were still outside through the window, and no one was there. What a relief. We continued getting ready when we saw a shadow go by through the bathroom window, which was a small square, made with that kind of glass that makes everything behind it really blurry. We waited to see in case it was just a bird flying by, when a hand hit it clear as day. We got scared. We did not know what to do. My brother had his cell phone, so he immediately called the police. While it was ringing we heard a loud bang at the door. Someone was brute forcing it. I do not know if they were kicking it or ramming it, but it was one of the most frightening things I have ever heard. My brother told me to lock the bathroom door, so I did. It took 5 bangs for the perpetrator to finally bash open the door. Then the police answered. I remember the exact thing my brother said. He was whispering. His voice could barely be heard. Hello, there is someone in our house. I think they are stealing. Then a pause. We are at our address. Another pause. I'm with my little brother locked in our bathroom. Please hurry. While all that was happening, I was sitting against the wall hugging my knees. It was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences ever. I could hear the man going through all of our stuff, emptying stands, going up and down the stairs, opening cabinets. He even broke a few cups and plates. I do not know why. Then I heard the sound my cell phone makes when it turns off, and I remembered leaving it on the kitchen table. I felt so stupid for leaving it there. Things continued for a couple of minutes when we heard him trying to open the door to the bathroom. My brother got a hold of a big metal rod we had lying around there. He started kicking the door. Who is there? The man screamed. We said nothing. Another kick. Then another. I felt I was about to have an anxiety attack. My chest started to ache. I had chills and I was really hot. I tried to remain calm, but it was just too much. After that, he stopped. We heard the door opening, and then silence. We waited for almost 10 minutes before going out of the bathroom. The living room was a total mess with lots of papers and books on the floor. The cabinets were open and cups and plates were on the floor. In our mother's bedroom, the nightstand and the closet were open, and everything inside them was all over the place. Upstairs, in our room, it was the same thing. In about 5 minutes, the man was able to go through everything we had and left a total mess. After that, my brother called my mum, and she ordered us to go to my aunt's as soon as possible, so we did. When we got there, I was a little more relaxed. My aunt was waiting for us with ice cream, probably because my mum told her everything, and she wanted to calm us down a bit. We went back home at about 5 p.m. My mum told her boss she had a home emergency, so she left early. She tidied up the house, cleaned up, and left everything the way it was before so we could be relaxed. I really appreciate her effort and my aunts to calm us down and do everything, so we did not have to think about it. According to my mom, the police got home after she arrived at 3 p.m., 4 hours after the incident. She explained everything, but because of a lack of evidence, nothing could be done. The man was never caught, and honestly, I do not think they even tried to search for him. The next few days, my mom was home with us. Now I tell the story as a funny anecdote. Luckily, no one was hurt, and he only took useless stuff. But at the time, I was really scared. To a 9-year-old, an experience like that can have serious repercussions. I am lucky it never came to that, and I got over it after a couple of weeks. So yeah, that is my story. Edit. Thanks to everyone for their support. I did not think this would get so many upvotes. Many of the replies are related to the 4 hours it took for the police to get there. My house was located on the far side of the city, but most importantly, and as I already replied to some, the police in my country sucked. If you ask around, chances are plenty of people who have called the police have had to wait for hours. Now they arrive within a reasonable amount of time, but back then, news about how long it took for them to respond was common. In fact, one of the reasons for the 2019 Chilean protests was the dislike for the police's labor. Fortunately, things are now getting better, and trust in the police, while still fragile, is improving. And that's it for today's video. These stories were seriously unnerving, but what makes them hit harder is how real and random they can be. My experience was during a school break at my cousin's house. I don't remember much, but I remember how they locked all of us inside the parents' room, and my uncle was roughed up right in front of us. It was a bit traumatizing, even now thinking about it. Thankfully, the police that time were more reliable than the ones in today's stories, but it still left a mark. So yeah, lock your doors, double-check those windows, and trust your gut. If today's video gave you chills, consider giving it a like. It really helps more people find these stories. And if you're new here, feel free to subscribe for more Reddit stories every week.